I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on the Spotlight Network, we're diving into the thought-provoking world of 2100. It is the latest speculative fiction novel written by a terrific author. His name is Robert Phillips. The story follows James Lawson, a modern-day businessman who wakes up after decades in hibernation to find a world transformed by climate change and a radical shift from wealth-driven living to community-focused survival. If you're fascinated by futuristic societies, environmental challenges, and how humanity might evolve, this is a conversation you won't want to miss. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Prime 7 Media for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. And be sure to download the Spotlight Network TV app, streaming on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire TV. Robert, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Greetings. What time is it there now?
Oh, it is in the afternoon at around 2 o'clock, but
Two
much
o'clock.
earlier
Good
there
afternoon.
in Australia. So we appreciate you getting up with us
Yeah.
and talking about this book. It really has the elements of classic sci-fi, but it's very unique as well. Tell us what it was like for your character, James Lawson, when he woke up in 2100.
Well, he'd grown up in our times with fairly classic views about the nature of life. That the main purpose was to maximise wealth.
Mhm.
That's sort of the prevailing ethos of our time. In fact, he became an entrepreneur because he wanted to make money.
Mhm.
He was at first skeptical about climate change until he realised he could make money out of dealing with it. But then he was strucken down by a type of brain cancer known as the glioblastoma, which it's very difficult to operate on.
Mhm.
So he was put into hibernation and was revived in the year 2100 and found himself in a very different world. And the novel is different from most sci-fi novels in that there are no aliens or monsters or anything like that. It's really what I set out to do was to describe what I thought life might be like, everyday life in the year 2100. And what he finds when he's revived is the whole focus of society has changed from maximising wealth to one of, as long as you live in a modicum of comfort, most important thing is to be part of your community,
Mhm.
to excuse me, to interact with your fellow citizens, and so it becomes more lifestyle oriented, and also, of course, dealing with the problems of climate change, which could be quite severe by then.
Mhm. Tell us how he adapts to this different world that prioritizes community over wealth. Is this a message to the world in a way from your book to let people know that we have our priorities a little bit askew right now?
Well, the thing is, you have to consider the way that such a world might come about. And it was as a result of difficult times in the decades to come, partly because of climate change and resource shortages and so on. But the main reason I suspect there are going to be economic difficulties is shortage of capital for investment.
Mm.
And I think there's a danger then that, see, if you think back to the GFC, the global financial crisis, I think what was at the base of that was it was overextension of credit. And then when the Federal Reserve increased the interest rate, the whole thing started to fall down. And we don't really seem to have learnt the lesson from that. That I think there could well be credit crises in future.
Mm.
And if you have that in combination with other things like climate change or perhaps another pandemic and so on, the whole system might not necessarily collapse, but to crumble. And then with high unemployment and so on, people will be forced to pool their resources to work with with their neighbours, with their community, to use their skills and so on to provide the basic necessities of living and so on. Now, it might be that in time, perhaps after a decade or two like that, that things do improve again. But by then, people have become so used to a community-oriented lifestyle that they've decided they'd rather keep going that way because it gives them a sense of belonging, of esprit de corps.
Yeah. Your occupation is kind of looking into a crystal ball and seeing what might happen. You worked in aviation risk analysis. So
Yeah.
creating a book of what might happen in the future is right up your alley, right?
Yes, although I started writing this book some years ago, but I'm not sure how much my risk analysis skills would have helped, but uh, it was more exercising my imagination and trying to think, how might people live their everyday lives in a situation like this? And uh, what happens with James is he's initially shocked by what he discovers, in a real culture shock. But he's a pragmatic sort of guy, and also a fairly sociable sort of fellow. So he does adapt in time to becoming part of this community. Now, one of the problems that he would face, being from our time, is that the people of 2100 are going to blame us for what happened. We're to blame as far as they'll be concerned. One thing that helped him, though, was that because he finished up running a company that helped to reduce the risks of climate change, he is more readily accepted amongst them. But it's basically is pragmatism, is adaptability, and being basically a fairly sociable sort of guy is what enables him to adapt to this new society he finds himself in.
Yeah. Have you envisioned this as a film?
Somebody did ask me that, and so I did actually sit down and ran through the whole book as if it were a film. But since it would have a running time of 4.5 hours, I don't think that would be that feasible.
Well, Hollywood's got a way of chopping it down and getting rid of this,
Yes,
and
I
getting rid
know.
of that. We just need to find a young Charlton Heston to play the role of James Lawson. That
Young Charlton Heston, sort of think of him leading people to the promised land or something. I don't know what sort of actor would be suitable to it.
Yeah.
It just doesn't necessarily have rugged good looks, but he's basically a fairly cheerful, likable sort of
Yeah.
guy.
Kind of an everyman in a way, right?
Well, maybe,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
he is a classic entrepreneur from our
Mhm.
time. So
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. What do you hope readers take away from your book?
an awareness that, well, a couple of things. Firstly, I mean, the book is on the whole fairly optimistic, whereas most books about the future are pessimistic, what they call dystopian fiction.
Yeah.
But in this one, I'm saying, well, hang on, it will probably be difficult. I have this view that when it comes to dealing with climate change, that the human race seems to have a flair for doing just enough at the last minute to avert disaster. I think we'll probably go right to the 2-degree limit, and beyond which you could get runaway climate change. But I think, for example, we probably will have phased out fossil fuels by about 2050, partly for environmental reasons and partly for economic ones. So I think what we're seeing now is the classic thing which has happened throughout the Industrial Revolution. New technology replaces the old. and the renewable industries are the new technology, and I think they are gradually replacing the old fossil fuel industries.
Hmm.
So I think the necessary changes will be made, but even once you stop producing carbon dioxide emissions, there's still going to be problems for a long time to come because of the heat in the system. And we're already experiencing that in Australia with up north, we're getting record floods. Down south, we get long hot periods and droughts and so on, and bushfires. Then it's always been a fairly harsh country, but in the novel, I do describe a dust storm, and later on in the mountains, a snowstorm. So the idea that extreme climate events are always with us.
Yeah. And we seem to be experiencing them right now here in the States as well. Lots of wildfires, lots of unprecedented storms. So I think your book also serves as a cautionary tale. But as you said, it doesn't present a future of that's dystopian. Rather, it's a future where people have adapted and made the
Yeah,
best of a
that's
bad
it.
situation. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The-
Which is why, although the society that James finds himself living in a community isn't utopia, it is actually quite a nice place in which to live, because he's part of this community. They work together and so on, so he gets this feeling of belonging and esprit de corps, which is something probably missing in modern society, I think.
Without a doubt. The name of the book is 2100. It is the latest speculative fiction novel written by Robert Phillips. The story follows James Lawson, a modern day businessman who wakes up after decades in hibernation to find a world that's been transformed, different, changed by climate change and a radical shift from wealth driven living to community focused survival. If you're fascinated by futuristic societies, environmental challenges, and how humanity might evolve, this is a book you'll want to pick up. The links are below this interview. Robert, thank you so much for joining me here today on Spotlight.
Oh, you're welcome, sir.
I appreciate your time, sir. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time until next time on Spotlight.